back to order. It's just 1:35. We're just a little bit late getting started for the afternoon session here. Now we'll take up item 31 Alpha because we're going to pass 29 for a minute here. Oh, let's just do, that's just set time. 31 Alpha. Who wants to start this off? Me? Okay, this is to appoint 4 members to the 911 Surcharge Advisory Committee. Two positions each to fill unexpired terms will expire on December 31st, 2019. 2 positions each to fill full terms that will expire December 31st, 2020. We have
Kathy Heath first.
Yeah, okay. Kathy. Bring Kathy in. Kathy, how you doing? I thought you were retired. The sheriff's office never been the same without you down there. You tell that to Furlong too, will you?
Is that right? I'll make sure and tell him that.
You tell him, you tell him. Good way to start and put you in the soup right away.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to be on the 911 Surcharge Committee?
I do, yes.
What straw did you choose? There are 3 of you.
What? I'm sorry?
What straw did you choose, the long or the short one?
Oh, I chose the short one. Well, Nancy, actually, you know.
All right. Kathy, just to get you started off here, I mean, there are 3 of you. We all know who you are. Why don't you tell us a little bit about? Well, the question I have is: do you think the 911 Surcharge Committee is a committee we need to have?
I do, yes,
Why?
and I think as time goes on, it becomes more important. When the surcharge was first implemented, there were really no expenditures out of the fund. And then we did Tiburon. We let it accumulate for a long time, and then we did the upgrade to Tiburon. But now with the increase in fee, I think the committee will be more active because there is going to be more money running through that system. And sometimes it's easy to make the wrong decision if you have too much money. And so we have to monitor that. So I do think it's important.
Very good. Okay. Who's next? Who wants to go?
No.
Go.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
This is just a question for your own personal philosophy, being on this committee. With the recent fires in Paradise, California, there was one 911 call, and the call was with regards to the best escape route. And response on the other end was, I don't know. So my question to you, and of course most recent for us, was the helicopter we had down when the Vice President came to visit Carson City, and all the traffic was rerouted through Lakeview. What do you see in your mind as an enhancement that could be added to rectify a situation like that so better information is gotten out?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm proud to say that our dispatch center is excellent. We are exceptional. We track every component of a call for service and report on that. So we currently have mapping. So it's a possibility that the mapping may be able to be expanded to include an escape route.
Mayor, we have 4 applicants and 4 positions, so I'm going to respectfully waive my question, although I would note, just for the record, I don't think we will have more money. We have more money coming through the fund, but not more available money because it's dedicated to debt service.
Exactly, it's dedicated.
Yeah, and I think we have 3 applicants.
4.
4?
One's a reappointment.
Oh, reappointment, right. Yeah, you're right.
That was
So
it,
we're going to.
right.
Okay, all right, go. Got any questions?
Well, since I don't know the other ones, I know you, so I'll make mine brief, though. Why don't you give me a little bit of your experience on writing or reviewing master plans, since that's a requirement of the job?
I don't have a great deal of experience on master plans per se, but writing operational plans and other types of implementation plans, I've had experience with that with the Sheriff's Office.
What I'd like you to do is tell me how it is I make right decisions when I have more money. But more to the point, do you think that enhanced 911 personnel training or better or improved equipment would do more to improve the system?
Oh, gosh. I don't think you can have one with, the one is not necessary if you don't have the other, basically. And the equipment has become so sophisticated that you have to have additional training than what we ever have. I would like to see the equipment expanded. I know that the dispatch manager has a lot of ideas about new equipment that she would like to take a look at that would fall under the group of the surcharge committee.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anything you want to add?
No, sir.
All right, Kathy, good to see you.
Thank
I
you.
understand you do some work on, part-time work for the sheriff too, is that right?
I do, yes.
All right, good. Well, he needs the help, so
Again, I'll let him know that you said
still
that.
harassing him. He needs the help. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Make yourself at home here. All right, who's next? Who's next?
Mary Catherine Durbin.
All right.
I think she said she goes by Katie.
Hi, Mary Catherine. How you doing? How you doing today?
If I were any better, I would be 20 years younger.
I'll remember that one. So why do you want to be on the 911 Commission?
I want to serve. I just want to serve.
Okay, we've all read the background on you, but let me ask you this question. It's the same I asked of Kathy, and I'll be asking the others. Do you think the 911 Committee is a committee that needs to continue on or not?
Definitely.
Why?
Our community is growing so fast. We need the committee to make sure that our community is served. And I don't know that if the committee was disbanded, if it would be.
Go.
Hi, and thank you for applying.
Thank you.
With the recent fires in Paradise, California, there was a 911 call that someone was asking for directions out, and the response on the other end was, I don't know. And, we just had a helicopter down, and traffic was redirected through Lakeview. And backed up. What enhancements do you see that our system might need so that it gives better direction? Not that we're having problems now, but it could be improved. So what's your thought?
Karen, I really don't know. I know that I have a whole lot of homework to do to be able to become more current with what the committee actually does. I know that teaching the 911 dispatchers for almost 20 years, that taught me a lot, but I've been out of it now for 4 years, so I've got to come back up to speed.
Okay, thank you.
Brand's passing because we got 4. 4 for 4. 4 for 4.
Okay,
So we kind of know where the vote's going to go, but we'd like to hear from you anyway.
okay.
How's that, huh?
That
We
sounds
kind of
good.
know where the vote's going to go. All right.
Good afternoon, Katie. Thank you so much for applying.
Thank you, Lori.
Can you please let me know any experience that you might have in writing or reviewing master plans?
Master plans, no, but if we can put it on a community college level, I have written the plan for the police academy as well as the dispatch academy up at the college and implemented all those plans with additions that the college has put on it for 20 years.
Well, just to start off, I wouldn't want to be 20 years younger because then I'd have to work full-time all the time. I was a reporter, so I worked more than full-time back then. But if I were any better, I'd be twins.
There you go.
Can you tell me, do you think that enhanced 911 personnel training or improved equipment would do more to improve the system?
That's a hard one. You have to have the equipment in order to serve a larger population, but without the training to handle that equipment, you may as well not have either.
Thank you.
Pretty good. Anything? Anything you want to add to that grilling? You're welcome to join us here. We're going to go through this. And Supervisor Barrett, John, it occurred to me when you were making your statement about 20 years younger that, the First Amendment never sleeps.
That's why I don't want to go back there.
All right. Thanks. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sit around. You're going to get appointed, so sit around.
Okey doke.
Daniel?
Sure.
How you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great.
You want to be on the 911 surcharge committee?
I do.
Good. The question we have, my question to you is, one, why do you want to be on the committee? And two, do you think this is a committee that ought to continue on in existence?
I'll address the second question first. I don't know enough about the committee. All I've read was on the posting, so I can't really address that. Regarding the first question, I have over 18 years of telecom experience and IT experience, so I feel I can really help the community I live in. I'm also the DAT duty officer for all of Nevada for Red Cross, so I interact with a lot of the emergency services.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you for applying. With the recent fires in Paradise, California, there was a 911 call, and the person was asking for the best escape route out, and the answer on the other end was, I don't know. And recently, we had a helicopter down when the vice president came to visit, and traffic was redirected through Lakeview and backed up all the way onto College Parkway. So, with those two examples in mind, what enhancements do you see might be needed to our 911 system?
Well, I think rerouting of the traffic, that could probably go out through notification text, as I've received several in the past week for the fires on Sea Hill. I think that, perhaps maybe streamlining the process to send the alerts where perhaps local police department can perhaps push these alerts. I'm not entirely familiar with the process of the way it's working right now. Could you repeat the question regarding the fire?
They're just kind of examples of, with regards to, on the one end on the fire, the person responding on the other end couldn't give a person an answer as to an escape route.
So there's a lot of technical tools we can use, GIS navigation stuff, that could be used to pinpoint the caller's location, which through E911 we should have if they're on a cellular phone or a landline, provided that that's integrated properly. And we should be able to identify a escape route through that system.
Good afternoon, and thank you for applying. Can you give me your experience on writing or reviewing master plans?
Through I own my own company. It's a software consulting company. I have 3 employees. I've written several plans for the LA Fire Department and different RFC proposals. But as far as a master plan, I really don't have a lot of experience in that.
Tell me, do you think enhanced 911 personnel training or upgraded equipment would do more to improve the system?
Without knowing the system, I can't really recommend that, but I would assume that that upgrading the system would probably be more efficient than perhaps more training of the employees, because you do have a churn rate with the employees, and upgrading a system will last forever.
Thank you.
It'd be nice to have someone with interoperability experience on the 911 stuff. Good stuff, all right. All right.
I worked for Telepacific, and we were implementing the E911 through the PSAP systems and backup redundant systems with that. So I'm very familiar with the actual technical aspects of
All right.
of E911.
Very good. All right. That's it. So hang out here. We're going to have a vote here. We have one reappointment. You know, Dan or Nancy, who is on the reappointment, on the, I always get confused on this. Do we interview reappointments or not? And what exactly did we say that the city manager could do with respect to reappointment applications?
I think if since there are 4 positions available and only 4 applicants, then we usually don't interview the reappointment. But if there's a reappointment and like 3 other people going for that spot, then we usually interview everyone.
But if there's only, say there's one, if there's just a reappointment and that's it, who makes that call? Is that the city manager or the board?
The board. I'm kidding, the 2 lawyers.
You're just trying to reduce your workload.
She recommends the reappointment.
Yeah. Okay.
Dan wants to say something.
You want to weigh in, Dan?
Yeah, you know, I don't know what's going on today. I just keep interrupting, so I don't mean to derail this. I just want to read something on the record for, you know, for the board to take under advisement real quick. And so this was recently brought to my attention. By recently, I mean within the last 10 minutes or so. This is the BCC Policies and Procedures Manual that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors, last amended in 2016. This is a conflicts provision. I'll just read this in its entirety. It's pretty short. Except as specifically required or allowed by law, city employees, including elected officials, persons who have been a city employee and/or an elected official during the previous 12 months, and persons who have a contract for services and/or goods with the city are not eligible for appointment to any city board, committee, or commission that has authority over the contract. I had to read this over probably about 3 or 4 different times just because of that last condition there. But the way I read it, and I think the proper interpretation of this BCC policy, is that these are separate categories. And so what I mean by that is if you're a person who has been a city employee during the previous 12 months, then you are not eligible for appointment to any board, committee, or commission, including the surcharge committee, except as specifically required or allowed by law. I also pulled up CCMC, which was required to be adopted for the creation of this advisory committee pursuant to 244A of NRS. The statute and the CCMC provisions are silent with respect to whether or not you can be a city employee, but I can say that it does not specifically require or allow by law that appointment of a city employee. So I'll let you take that under advisement. So I guess, you know, a roundabout way of saying this, or I guess I should say a nutshell summary of this, is I believe, if I'm reading this correctly, and as much as I like her personally, because I've worked with her over at the SO for the last 3 years,
Kathy doesn't
I don't
apply.
believe Kathy is eligible for appointment.
She's an hourly worker for, is she an employee?
Yes.
She's an employee.
She's an
Okay, well,
employee.
she's out then, all right. It's a good
So,
call.
and
That's
I
why we do
apologize, I
this.
didn't catch that earlier.
That's one of the
but-
things we should have caught
Yeah.
before we went down the road here.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
we'll entertain a motion to appoint Denise, Catherine Durbin, and Daniel McKeon.
I'll make it.
Do we want one of them to be through 2020, though?
Well, I'll make a motion and see where it goes. I move to appoint Mary Catherine Durbin to the 911 Surcharge Advisory Committee to fill an unexpired term that will expire on December 31st, 2019, and Denise Stewart and Daniel McKeon, each to fill full terms that will expire on December 31st of 2020.
There's a motion and a second discussion.
In this particular case, I thought we had 4 applicants for 4 positions, all of which appeared to be on the surface qualified, but we have 2 members who have no experience with the 911 committee. My preference would be to appoint those 2 members with no experience as the unexpired terms, which gives them a full year to participate in the committee and see if they like it and if they want to continue. And then, because we're going to have one appointment not filled regardless of which way you go.
Right.
So my thoughts, so.
Okay.
I think he had the experience,
Yeah.
though, in the inoperability, which we're not going to let him resign. It's like, you're in for 2 years, yeah.
I
Because
felt
we're
that
doing
he
it.
had more technical experience than the other applicants, so that's my thought process for the extended period of time.
All right.
You're on the hook.
Well, it's a discussion, it's a worthwhile discussion. All right. Did we make a motion on this?
Yeah.
All right, motion. Is there a second on it?
Yep, I did.
I gotta get my computer up, man. I am running too fast. Let me get,
So you can push a button.
so I can push the button, yeah.
Now we
This is what happens when you eat in a hurry.
There we are.
Go.
All right. Came right up. Okay. Further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay. All right. Let's now take up ladders.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the board, Sean Slayman, Fire Chief, for the record. What we have before you today is a recommendation for purchase of a Type 1 fire engine and an aerial fire truck, aerial ladder apparatus. Before we go into the actual staff report, I thought it would be appropriate of establishing the need, how we got to where we are, and what we did to evaluate the different types of ladder trucks that are available to us out there for recommendation of purchase. So I've got a fairly short presentation I'd like to make for you. Establishing the need, Carson City had a ladder truck, has had a ladder truck available since the early 1960s. However, the last ladder truck went out of service in 2011 for mechanical and essentially old age, and it had not been replaced. As of today, Carson City has 40-plus buildings that are greater than 2 stories high, and several others either under construction or in the planning phases. In addition to that, we have approximately 300 1- and 2-story buildings that have roof lines that are beyond the scope of our ground ladders that we carry on our current fire apparatus, and thus requiring a mutual aid ladder truck. Mutual aid comes from either Douglas County by 2 choices, one from East Fork, which is Mendon and Gardnerville area, and then Tahoe Douglas Fire Protection District, which is up at the lake. And then the other alternative for a mutual aid ladder truck comes out of Reno. The interesting part, relying on neighbors for ladder trucks is a tedious situation. They're fairly expensive. Most of the other agencies have a single ladder truck, and that is it. So when we are borrowing it through a mutual aid, they don't have it for their response capabilities. In addition to that, for example, East Fork, their ladder truck has been out of service for a little over 2 months. It's getting up there in age itself, and it has been in for repairs and is not available to us. Just earlier this year, we had a rescue where we rescued an 8-year-old kid from a 2-story apartment complex with a fire on the 2nd floor. We did not need the aerial ladder for that. We were able to rescue him by using ground ladders. However, the fire had breached into the attic and breached the roof line and was threatening through embers to spread to adjacent apartment buildings. The best way to attack that is through what we call a ladder pipe operation off of a ladder truck. A ladder truck had been requested. It happened to be coming from downtown Reno. That was our closest ladder truck available that day. So it puts us at great jeopardy. We're looking at a 30 to 40 minute response time for those types of apparatus. Primary functions, and there are many, many functions of these. I'm sorry I couldn't find a good looking yellow ladder truck available to us. So I've got a couple apologies in here for that. But primary functions, the rescue of trapped civilians from upper stories, so greater than 2 stories. It is also used for aerial fire suppression capabilities, such as in this picture, where they are either attacking the fire or attempting to knock down firebrands so it doesn't extend to additional buildings. It's also utilized for our firefighters to gain access to the upper floors for fire attack and rescue situations, or to the roof for what we call ventilation, where we are essentially cutting a hole in one's roof to remove the superheated fuels and gases so that occupants have a chance of survivability, and it improves the safety of our firefighters as they go inside to suppress the fire. And then in addition to that, it is a very big toolbox on wheels. So technical rescue, which we have a tremendous exposure to, everything from our canyons, where we have rope rescues, where we often have recreational vehicles that maybe go off the side of an Ash Canyon or a Kings Canyon area and require us to rappel down on ropes, hook up a rope system, and bring the victims back up. So this ladder truck will be able to perform all of those functions. So that's a little bit of what they do in establishing the need. How we got to where we have. When I first came here, we didn't really have a strongly active apparatus committee made up of members. Zach and a couple department members was our apparatus committee. We kind of added to that, and the goal of that was for long term. So our current committee is made up of 2 members of every rank in the fire department, as well as fleet services representation. So it's everyone looks at it from their specialty. Zach will look at it from the maintenance and the longevity and standardization point of views. A firefighter will look at it from where they sit in their position, a driver operator, and so on for each of their positions. So we get a lot of technical expertise out of this committee. Their primary mission is to research and develop apparatus specifications and recommend for purchase for fire department apparatus. That's all of our apparatus. They'll review all of that. Some of the research will include the operational capabilities of said apparatus, in this case a ladder truck, as well as the cost of purchase and the cost to operate and maintain, and the projected longevity of each apparatus. What we don't want to do is spend a lot of money on something that we're not going to get a long lifespan on, nor do we want to go low bid on something that has a history of maintenance problems. So our apparatus committee had the task of earlier this year of starting research for ladder trucks. There are a wide variety, and I won't get too technical on some of these, but a quint is a ladder truck that has hose and water on it, and it's kind of an amalgamation of an engine and a ladder truck. There are also tower ladders and telescoping aerials which have baskets on them, the booms, and then different styles of actual straight ladder trucks, which we're actually going to recommend to you today. The research included the operations of each of the vehicles, the maneuverability, so no good to buy a ladder truck that doesn't have access to a lot of our areas. So if you look at an apartment complex, we often have carports, and those are very tight areas. It's even difficult for an engine to get in, so making it a ladder truck access even more difficult. So those are some of the things that we looked at, or the committee looked at as we went to that. Other key points are the cost of the vehicle, projected maintenance issues, and expected lifespan of each apparatus. To do that research, the committee made several trips to Sacramento. There is a large Pierce manufacturer and warranty shop there, and they have a whole host of ladder trucks from different departments that they're either taking receipt of and getting ready to deliver to the department off of purchase, or others that may be in for repair or maintenance, everything from vehicle accidents to warranty issues. So we were able to look at the various different types of ladder trucks and also talk to the individual agencies of the pros and cons of each of their ladders. The committee also reached out to other fleet facilities and other fire departments outside of the ladder trucks they saw there to further conduct their research on what is the best fit for Carson City. After extensive research, the committee is recommending the purchase of a tractor-drawn aerial, also known as a tiller truck. Significant to note on that, so we talked a little bit about a quint, and it wouldn't make sense. Why would you not want to have water on your fire apparatus? One of the challenges with quints when you get into a 100-foot aerial is the weight. They are extremely heavy, they're very hard on our roads, and they're very hard on their suspension and on the ladder truck itself. They have a higher rate of maintenance and breakdown because of the additional weight, water being 8.5 pounds per gallon, and if we're looking at 500 gallons, you're getting up there in additional weight. So with modern technology, there's something out there called compressed air foam systems, and with that, basically a 70-gallon tank that fits in a single compartment will provide, according to the manufacturer, will provide up to 1,400 gallons of fire suppression capabilities off of those 70 gallons, and that's by compressing the air and by utilizing foam. So this ladder truck that we're recommending will be able to manage car fires, small roadside grass fires, dumpster fires, trash fires, and your typical everyday nuisance fires that we deal with. So they'll have that capability. They'll also have capability because of the foam to lay a blanket of foam on a neighboring building if necessary to protect exposures. It's not designed for an interior fire attack, but that's why we have our fire engines, and we would still have that to operate. So looking at and then the other part of a quint is the added cost of the pump and the tank and everything that goes with it. So when you look at the maintenance on a daily basis, the added weight, and then the added cost, and you lose some compartment space, not able to carry the same amount of equipment, versus with the CAF system, the compressed air foam system, this was by far the better choice to go with, and for our agency. The other significant separation from a tiller-driven or a tractor-driven apparatus or a tiller is it has two drivers, a front and a back, and we have the ability to literally do a U-turn in a residential court with a tiller. I've got experience, actually, best job in the world, minus being the fire chief for Carson City, but driving, I used to be a tiller driver for my former department, and so I have a fair amount of experience. Actually, I have a lot of experience in tillers, straight ladders, and quints themselves, and tillers, in my opinion, far outperform the other types of ladder trucks, especially for our agency. It'll allow us to get into those apartment complexes that I referred to because of the combination of the driving. There's a little additional training tied to that, but we have absolutely the best firefighters around, and I have no doubt with a good, solid training program, which we're building now, that we'll be very good at that. And this type of a ladder truck gives us the best access, the best price per dollar, and a good longevity. In addition to that, because of the length of the ladder truck, it allows for more compartment space. Speaking of length, one of my directions was it will fit in all three fire stations, and it will. So we had to work quite a bit with the manufacturer and to look at some other models, and we do have the specs that will fit in all three of our fire stations. And this is kind of a picture of one. This is the one of the two that was purchased in Modesto prior to my leaving. And again, ours is going to be much sexier looking. It's yellow. So, God, that's hard to say. But this is just for reference for you to look at and kind of what a tiller truck looks like. I think it's important for you to understand what that is. A quint would look like the same thing, except you would have a big pump panel, the silver part of our fire engine, right in the middle of that. And so you'd lose the space, it would cost more money, and it would be extensively heavier.
Just for me, how do you spell quint, and where did that name come from?
Quint. So
is it short for something?
It's a quintuple.
Oh.
So a ladder, a hose, a water, and what? Pump, thank you. Ladder and pump. I always think water and pump is the same thing, but so where we are looking at locating this ladder truck, if approved, it would go to Fire Station 52, which is on Airport. or on College Parkway by the airport. The truck will be cross-staffed with existing personnel. We will have procedures in place of when it responds versus the engine and when the engine responds versus that. Initially, the plans we'll look at is still continuing to operate on the engine, and they'll move over to the ladder truck as need be. The estimated service life of this ladder truck will be 20 years. We're looking at 15 years of first due service and an additional 5 years in a reserve status. But because of our great maintenance and the way we take care of our apparatus, from our firefighters to our fleet services, the engine that we're recommending today to replace separately is a 25-year-old engine, and those are on a 15-year lifespan. So we've gotten a good life out of our apparatus because we take very good care of them, and we have an outstanding fleet maintenance program. So as we get to pricing, I'll pass to Zach a little bit. He did a lot of the workings with that.
Good afternoon. Zach Good, Carson City Fleet Supervisor. This is where I get to jump in because this is the numbers and the purchasing program that, we sought out to recommend to purchase our products off of. Definitely wanted to go on the record and highlight on the numbers is that we had a total cost of almost $1.9 million, and with our multiple vehicle purchase and our discounts that we were able to shave almost $100,000 off of that, or basically with our prepaid discount, which if approved, we intend to exercise, which will bring us into a total purchase price of $1.853 million. So just wanted to make sure that's very clear because even in Superior's quote, it's just a little confusing to follow the bouncing ball. So I want to make sure everybody's understood that. Is Supervisor Brad Barkowski made us aware of is that the HGAC contract that we are purchasing off of is possible to expire before the delivery of the machine. But as he pointed also out in the contract, and we saw as well, and our vendor made us assure of, is that our price will remain the same.
So, and I'll add, looking at the purchase price of an aerial ladder truck, the list price obviously is $1.3 million. We're getting it down to a little, right into the $1.2 million category with the discounts. It's an extremely expensive investment, but it is a long-term investment. It is absolutely what I believe and recommend as your fire chief is a needed investment. And when you look at that price, the immediate reaction for, I would think, the layperson is, wow, what are they buying? Are we getting full leather? Is this, is this the Ferrari or the Rolls Royce? And it is absolutely not. That committee pared down that ladder truck to absolutely what we need. A lot goes into it, a lot of safety features, a lot of engineering gets built into it. And I'll give an example of that less pretty red ladder truck from Modesto. We purchased two right before I left. The total purchase price for each ladder truck was $1.26 million for each of them, which is right at or we're actually just under that. And prices, because of steel tariffs and just annual cost increases, I believe have gone up about 18% since 2016. So add 18% to their 1.26, and we are significantly less than that. And I'll tell you, they didn't get a lot of bells and whistles on those ladder trucks either. We were very tight with that, and they had the compressed air foam system, and they like that a lot, and it's been very successful with fire suppression capabilities.
We have some questions up here. Let me just make one comment before we get to Supervisor Bonkowski and Supervisor. We got some lights up here to be talking about. But I think I may have talked to you about this before, but before you came, Chief Shreehans was here. There was a fire out of the industrial air park right next to Click Bond out there. And that fire was right in the middle of a one-story building, right in the middle of it, where you couldn't get in the side doors. You couldn't get anybody in. You had to attack it from above. And, I always was a skeptic about ladder trucks because I thought, why do we need one around here? Ormsby House has been closed for a long time. I don't need it to get up there. But when I saw that happen, and we got a ladder truck from another jurisdiction for that, but it brought home to me that, you know, there are times, even on these one-story fires, where you need that kind of capability if you're going to do things. And that was one where we, you know, evacuated everybody out of that building, and we couldn't get enough water on it. I mean, it was, but anyway, that's my 2 cents. Supervisor Bunkowski, then Supervisor Barrett.
Chief, in your earlier presentation, you made a comment that per the manufacturer, the compressed air foam system has certain specs that it should perform under. And then you just said that the Modesto trucks have the foam system and they like the way the system works. Can you kind of clarify that? Because those two statements seem to conflict with one another. Have you spoken to other departments like Modesto who actually use this system and it actually does work and we're not just relying on the manufacturer's specs?
Yes, we have done our research. Modesto and Contra Costa specifically have the very similar ladder trucks with the CAF system on there, and it is been very successful for what it is designed for. I mentioned earlier what I'm always skeptical of what a salesperson will tell you, and taking a 70-gallon compressed foam system and telling me it's going to provide 1,400 gallons of fire suppression capabilities, I'm always a little suspect of those types of statements. I'm not questioning the manufacturer at all on that, but I'm also a realist. But what I do know is we will have good capabilities for fire suppression for the smaller type of fires.
And then if the ladder truck's being used in a reserve or secondary option, how do you think that affects the useful service life? Because now it should be extended beyond the 20 years that the manufacturer says, depending again on our maintenance.
Yeah, it's actually an excellent question. And yes, you can extend the service lives of these ladder trucks. We've even seen it, even talking to people that have refurbed or kept ladder trucks around for up to about 30 years, and it's cost effective to do it. The biggest point I would like to make is that you will never ever beat time. So the thing is, your maintenance program is something to be focused on with a large apparatus like this. And the fact is that at the 15 to 17 year mark, I'm going to be coming back here, if I'm still working here, I hope, and recommending, like, hey, we do a major rebuild. We go through, we itemize the things that we need to think that have to have some attention, whether, you know, paint is still a protective coating. We might have it repainted, what certain portions on the ladder need to be looked at, x-rayed, or taken care of. But yes, you can even give, this is the reason why also we purchase some of these particular lines of machinery, because they have rebuildability. You know, they're built as a good product. You have a good foundation to start off of, and then you have something down the road that you can refurbish and give a second life to. So that is also some of the thought behind this process, and to extend the livelihood of such an expensive machine.
Well, 16 or 17 years from now, we'll have an asset management program that's fully implemented, and the money will be there, and all you have to do is come in with your CIP budget, and we'll just allocate the funds for you.
I hope it's that easy.
Zach, I don't know if I'm the oldest person in the room, but as the oldest person up here, I appreciate your reference to there's just no way to get around time. It comes, doesn't it? Some of my maintenance efforts on myself tell me that.
We used to put a blanket over the clock at the legislature so that the time never ended.
That's.
I was thinking about putting one up there too.
That's true. I covered 4 legislatures, and they all ignored the clock one way or the other.
Yeah.
I also want to say that great minds work in the same pathways, and so do Brad's mind. I wrote down when the chief said what he said, quote, according to the manufacturer. And then I wrote CAF foam. Didn't know what those things were all about, actually, much. But you've answered that question. The truth of the matter is, when somebody says according to, I go back to my days as a reporter and I go, according to that guy over there, doesn't mean you actually believe him all the time. So your skepticism regarding the manufacturer is well taken.
Sean, besides yourself, do we currently have fire personnel that are ladder truck trained? And if we do not, how are they going to accomplish training so once this gets here, you can hit the ground running?
So we have 3 people, including myself, that have worked on ladder trucks and have extensive operations, including a fairly new firefighter that we hired from another agency. The manufacturer will give us some basic operations. There are programs out there. There are other organizations. There are also fire departments that will offer up personnel to come out and train, kind of a swap we may be able to provide. So my former organization doesn't do wildland fires very much. It's flat and urban, and but they do a lot of ladder truck work, so we may be able to bring some of their personnel up for some of the additional training. We're also in advance sending some of our personnel to ladder operations training symposiums and putting them in those classes where they're getting that firsthand knowledge and that experience to gain from there.
Any other questions? The chief, public comment on this issue? Anybody want to weigh in? All right, board, we ready to try a motion? We'll see where it goes.
I move to approve the purchase of 1 new Type 1 fire engine and 1 new tractor-drawn aerial apparatus utilizing cooperative purchasing contract number FS12-17 with HGAC BUY for a not-to-exceed amount of $1,853,041.22.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Go.
I just want to say thank you for providing the additional discussion points. I had a lot of questions from constituents concerning the ladder truck versus a Quint. A lot of experience, a lot more than I guess we realize sometimes, that people in the community come from many places and thought we weren't making a wise choice necessarily on the vehicle. So thank you for taking the additional time to say why the ladder truck was selected versus the Quint. So I really appreciate the extra efforts.
Okay, John, is your last one?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave it on, but I would like to say also, thank you for thinking of the effect on our roads of all that extra water. So I'm for the foam.
All right, any other questions on the motion, discussion on the motion? Public, anybody? I called for that already. Anybody want to weigh in? Anybody want to weigh in on Quint? Back there? I see your fireman back there. Saying, hey, what are we doing? We should get a Quint.
He's turning around like, oh, me?
Sure they're not.
We're fine.
All right,
Okay.
all right. Brad, did you have a question?
No, I just want to push the button.
Oh, all right. On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carrie, did you push?
I did. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Go do good work.
You ready for another presentation?
Nope, we're not. We're going to take a break until. All right, Nancy, we're going to take up your issue. This is a presentation of interim city manager's progress report on city initiatives and strategic planning, and also to give an update of what your visions are, and to talk to us about whether or not you want to be and should be reappointed or appointed as our city manager. Go.
All right, so in my report, I'll go over the progress the city's made on the current strategic plan, major initiatives we're working on now, and ideas for future goals and objectives. So first, I'm going to talk about major initiatives that we're working on. We have some major software implementations going on over the next 14 months. The biggest project affecting all departments citywide is the implementation of the new ERP system. And this is going to be implemented in phases with final go-live anticipated in January of 2020. So the orange bars are the components of this new system with financials, community development, human capital, capital asset management, and utility billing. So this is a huge undertaking for the city. We've had our current system since 1990, but this system will allow us to move from our many manual processes to a fully integrated electronic processes. So next is the green bars, and this is the implementation of DevNet's property tax appraisal software. The assessor go-live is anticipated to be April of 19, and the treasurer portion for tax collection will be August of 19. So last is the yellow bar, which is performance metrics, and Socrata, which is our software company, will be working with us in the next several months to redesign our performance dashboard. So speaking of asset management, or now the ZAC fire truck replacement program, the city's been working on this over the last several years, and we're still in the process of performing assessments to all the city assets. We're looking at incorporating, possibly incorporating this into the Tyler asset management software. And the goal is to ultimately be able to use this information for the budget and the CIP process to make sure, to ensure our decisions are based on critical asset needs, conditions, and levels of service.
Nancy, while you're on that, you know, we've been talking about asset management. We've been working at it for 2 or 3 years now. Why does it take so much time? Why haven't we just gone down to what's happening there? I mean, we talked about it, but what's going on in terms of, are we, let me put it this way, what kind of a priority does it have in your office and your department head's office?
I think it's a big priority. There's still another step that we need to do when the funding becomes available. Well, funding's probably the number one reason that it takes so long. So when the funding becomes available, we need to hire a consultant to perform a reserve study, and that this will outline when major assets will need to be replaced and determine the proper reserves that should be maintained. And then the funding is the critical piece of it, I believe.
So, yeah.
So the design and the implementation of the asset management program happens in steps. First was inventorying all the assets and then creating a software platform that we could input that data into. Next is the reserve study, which is expensive and takes quite a bit of time, but that's the real core of the asset management program, because that schedules out every component of the city right down to light fixtures, the replacement or the estimated useful life, the cost of replacement that is adjusted for inflation over time, and how much money we need to be setting aside every year to implement this. Once all of that is done, then we have to actually go into the budget and find the resources to match the reserve study. And so where we're at now is that we have input or almost finished inputting, and you can correct me, Darren, if I misspeak, we've almost input or have input all of the assets into the software program. The next step is the reserve study, and then after the reserve study, which they're working on now, is trying to designate the existing items in the budget that are already used for maintenance and repairs so that we can identify those and then figure out what that gap funding is that we would have to cover.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that reserve study can't be done until the inventory is over, so, and that inventory it takes a little time too, obviously.
All right, so on to the funding piece of that. So the financial and budget policies are being updated, and they're going to be brought to the board in the next meeting. We have established a minimum of 5 cents of the general fund property tax towards asset management. And another possible option for the board would be to transfer some portion of our annual savings in the general fund to the extraordinary maintenance fund. And spending out of this fund is restricted to only extraordinary maintenance, repair, and improvement. So as Sherry said earlier, that amount for fiscal 18, my estimate was a little off. I had 1.5 million, but it's actually 1.6 million.
And those are items to qualify that have an estimated useful life or replacement life of 5 years minimum?
Yes, yes. Okay, then also, we're ensuring that we're providing capital improvements and equipment at the landfill, as well as setting aside funds for landfill closure. That amount for fiscal 18 was 1.3 million. And the UFOC has approved to recommend to the board the utility fund changes to the financial and budget policies. And currently, all enterprise funds are meeting their operating and capital reserves. So this is just a slide that shows the amounts from our annual capital improvement program. With the times being good over the last several years, we've tried to catch up as much as we could with deferred maintenance. And over the last 3 years, we've been able to increase general government capital funding significantly. So those are the amounts in blue. And we've done this by issuing medium-term bonds, the Energy Conservation Project, and also general fund savings. So we went from 4.5 million in 2016 to 12.3 million in fiscal year 19. The jump in 2016 and 17 in the enterprise funds, which is the orange, is for the Water Resource Recovery Facility, or the wharf. Yeah. So on to the next major initiative, pavement management plan and street maintenance. The condition of the city's roads has been a major concern for our citizens, and we've talked a lot about this earlier when we talked about the V&T tax. It would cost in excess of $16 million annually to maintain the city's roads. But here are some of the things that are helping us close a very small portion of that funding gap. So, let's see. So the fuel tax increased from fiscal 17 to 18 by 8%, up to 5.6 million. This is up $1 million from the low of 4.5 in 2013. So that's good news. 3.8 million is from the 9 cents that goes to the Regional Transportation Fund, and that's in the blue. And then 1.8 million is the 6.35 cents that goes into the Street Maintenance Fund, and that's in orange. Some of this increase may be the result of the fuel tax discrepancy between Washoe County and Carson City, which is a benefit for us. And then, in addition, our new solid waste collection services franchise agreement that will be effective in July of 19. That includes a 3% franchise fee to address the roadway impacts. And then also, we talked about earlier, the board approved an amended plan of expenditure for the V&T infrastructure tax, which will allow us to use some of this funding for roads. Another source of funding, which after the discussion this morning might not be an option, is if the board did decide to continue the V&T tax, that would give us approximately 1.4 million a year. But we're not looking at that option anymore. Maybe the other board in 2025. All right. So, where did my little slide go? So, some potential legislative opportunities are, we're looking at a 5-cent diesel tax. This would be approximately $250,000 annually to Carson City. And we're also looking at revisiting fuel tax indexing and possible amendments to NRS.
Can I ask you on that? Mm-hmm. Are you indicating that those are legislative options that we're going to be supporting or requesting?
They're just potential, legislative options.
Okay.
Well, and as I said this morning, I will vehemently go out and support them myself. I don't know what this board will do, but we got to do something long-term.
Well, the first, I know that there's, NACO's got a bill out there. It's kind of the same as it was last session about the diesel tax that died at the last minute. So I think that's kind of what you're getting at there.
Those are just potential ideas.
It's not Bill's, Carson City.
No.
No, it's interesting that, it never lost on me, the Carson City residents don't pay any diesel tax.
I know.
None. So if you're driving a diesel car in Carson City, you're not paying any tax on that,
Which are in one show.
okay. And, well, I'll leave it at that. Okay.
As a city, we realize the value of building partnerships with the surrounding local governments and the state in order to be more efficient and provide quality services to the citizens. So we've been meeting with the Governor's Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology to look at partnering with other agencies for broadband services to enhance connectivity throughout the community. We are also teaming up with UNR to form a partnership with Nevada Division of Environmental Protection to implement a regional approach to regulations and enforcement. And this is the item we were talking about earlier. We're partnering with the new Nevada Shared Radio System and to replace replacement radio equipment at a significant discount. That was 72%. And this gives the city the ability to communicate with all of our regional partners. We recently entered into an agreement with East Fork Fire to establish the closest resource would respond to the border areas regardless of jurisdiction. And this will allow the fire department to operate more efficiently and reduce response times. And we're also in talks with Truckee Meadows Fire for the same type of agreement at the north end of Carson. So the next part is strategic planning. I'll be going over some of the objectives we have achieved from our current strategic plan, ideas for new objectives in the future, and this is just will be a helpful guide for the board for when we have the board retreat in January. So our current plan expires in fiscal 2020, so we'll begin the process for the next plan at the end of 2019. Some of the steps to be taken in developing that plan include conducting an employee survey. We'll also conduct a citizen survey. The next step will be to conduct strategic planning sessions with the board, the department directors, and elected officials. And another important part of the process will be to establish the performance measures that are relevant and can be measured. So the strategic plan should be reviewed annually to prioritize the city's objectives during each budget cycle. I'm not sure that we've done that each year. And so that will ensure that we remain aligned and accountable with the city's strategic goals. So our current strategic goals are economic development, efficient government, organizational culture, quality of life and community, safety, and sustainable infrastructure. So some of the, for the objective, under economic development, the objective develop the downtowns. These are some of the completed projects. The downtown Carson Street, the 3rd Street Plaza, Curry Street, and 5 east-west downtown streets between Carson and Curry. The city established the Neighborhood Improvement District, or the NID, for the ongoing maintenance of those projects. And these projects have also included critical improvements to the city's aging water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure, and they included the undergrounding of overhead power lines and and conduit for fiber optic communications. Some of the accomplishments under the objective market community assets, we're doing more to market the city's many special events. We have special event flyers and a city calendar that can be found on the city's website. In addition, we have a link on our website that takes you to events in and around Carson that's maintained by the Cultural and Tourism Authority, or the CTA. The Parks and Recreation Open Space Activity Guide can also be found on our website, and that provides information on the many activities that are offered at our recreational facilities. In May of 2018, the cooperative agreement with CTA was amended to allow the city to administer the position of the Arts and Culture Coordinator. And it's been a great addition for the city, and Mark is bringing out the artist in all of us. And this is a picture of City Hall. We're even sprucing that up with some art. So under supporting businesses, we just talked about earlier, we've established the facade improvement program, redevelopment funding for downtown equipment and infrastructure, and funding for special event street closures. And in May of this year, the board approved a grant from the Hop and May Adams Foundation, which we heard about earlier, the Hub. Under supporting development, we've added fees into the Lampa Ranch Development Agreement to offset the increase in cost of the city as a result of that project. And as we discussed earlier, community development is in the process of implementing new software that will allow for online plan submittal and review, as well as the ability to take electronic payments for all development permits. So some new objectives and some of these are already in the works. Construction of the South Carson Street Complete Streets project, that will start the end of 19 and end in 2021. This $19 million project will facilitate safe travel for pedestrians and cyclists, improve access to businesses, promote private investment, increase driver safety, and prepare the city for future smart city advancements.
That's not a new strategic plan objective. We already, are you
I don't
just
think
saying
it's-
new project, not new objective?
It wasn't included in I didn't see it in our current strategic plan.
Complete streets, well, I mean,
Yeah, I didn't see it in there, so that's just new to the strategic plan. It's not.
Well,
in the
and
current
originally, we were going to go downtown and William. Now we're going to go downtown and south, so that's
one. Yeah,
part of
from what
that.
I saw, it just addressed the downtown in our current strategic plan. Okay,
we just broke it up as quarters for the money.
yeah.
We have a lot to write.
So this project is currently at 30% designed, and that will be brought to the board at the next board meeting. So the next projects after the South Carson corridor, we'll move on to North Carson and William Street. And these projects will be funded in part by the infrastructure tax bonds, $7 million. The total amount for these projects is $15 million. So we'll be trying really hard, working with our federal lobbyists to try to obtain some more grants, like the Tiger Grant. So, and also now that the downtown projects are complete, we need to look at completing a downtown parking study to determine the needs and develop solutions for downtown parking. Another new objective is to expand the partnership with the CTA. The city was just involved in the recruitment process of the new executive director position. And we're also looking at partnering with the CTA to make improvements to recreational facilities to increase our ability to attract special events and tourism to Carson City. So achievements under implement best practices. HR is coordinating, performing trainings on the various software programs, supervisor training, and specific policy procedure training. In addition, risk management provides training on workers' compensation laws. Under maximize communication and transparency, the city holds an annual budget open house to provide the public with an opportunity to meet with individual departments and be more involved in the budget process. Under leverage technology, we've already talked about the implementation of the new ERP system. We implemented open budget and open expenditures on the city's website. We've increased, with the increased funding available in the capital improvement plans for technology, we've been able to update many of our aging systems. In addition, as we replace the water and sewer lines and streets, we're adding conduit for fiber to add better connectivity. So some new objective under efficient government, we need to complete the fiber from Roop and Long Streets to Fire Station 52 on College Parkway, and then to the Multipurpose Athletic Center. The South Carson Street will include fiber to complete the South Carson fiber ring, and this will provide high availability, resilience, and redundant pathways. And we're going to continue to work on smart city initiatives and coordinate with the DA's office to develop a systematic approach for updating the city ordinances. Dan's excited about that. So also look at re-engineering processes, working smarter. The implementation of the new ERP system is an excellent opportunity to really look at our processes, to identify the most efficient way to do our jobs, and the collaboration between the end users, the IT department, and the administrators will result in a more successful implementation.
Are we working in silos now?
No.
Well,
Sometimes.
I get it. I mean, like, 'cause one of the things on the audit that we had, was, maybe we should have had a little bit more discussion between accounting and public works. But I don't see us working strictly in silos. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree with the concept that we shouldn't be doing that anyway. I mean, we shouldn't be doing that in city development either, so.
Right. I mean, I think we're really good about, across all departments actually working together. It's just sometimes I think you get busy in your own world and, you forget to reach out to the other departments, so. So another new objective is to review and update the Carson City Connect program. And this will actually be part of the Tyler implementation as well, and it will be fully integrated with some of the other Tyler modules. So, and we might want to consider enhancing the 311 system by having a dedicated employee that can prioritize and process the cases and expedite customer service to the citizens. We also want to look at expanding GIS applications that can be accessed by city staff as well as the public. So on to organizational culture, some of the achievements include the Parks Department holds a voluntary all-staff employee workday to get employees out of their normal working environments. And this year in September, we had a leadership retreat for city directors designed to foster team building among the departments, provide leadership training, and strategic planning. And this will be an annual event that will also be used as a planning tool for the board retreat. Under strengthen employee development, HR has developed many in-house training programs that are more specific to the city and specific job functions. And then under support innovative ideas, the Health and Human Services Department has developed a quality improvement plan. We have the Employee of the Quarter program to recognize employees for exceptional performance. And length of service certificates are awarded monthly to recognize employees for their dedicated service. Some new objectives under organizational culture: establish the tone at the top. That's management's commitment towards openness, honesty, integrity, and ethical behavior. This sets the city's guiding values and the ethical climate, and this is the most important component of the internal control environment. lead by example. Whatever tone management sets will most likely have a trickle-down effect across the city, on employees across the city.
To me, that's one of your most important issues. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Us accountants like that. Huh, Sherry?
Just so long as you don't make misspellings on your cover letter, that's fine.
Yeah. I already gone through those. I saw a bunch of myself, so.
They did.
Okay, so we're going to work on developing policies and procedures manual and provide training to city departments on the agenda process, and Dan's going to help us with that. Let's see. And then also leverage the training opportunities available through the library. They brought up lynda.com earlier, and there's a lot of training for free on that. And also look at developing a government entrepreneurship program, possibly at the hub. And this is a way to encourage innovation and process improvement that is employee-driven.
Since you're at that juncture, if I could interrupt, I am actually quite concerned about the fact that Valerie is leaving and that we're early in this process. We got 3 years and some of that's already gone. And so I know there's a layer between us, the library board, and the librarian, and et cetera. But I think it's crucial who comes into that spot next, and I understand that Valerie's going back to what was her original studies and probably her first love, but we've got to get somebody in there that'll stay and make it go. So I just brought that out. We talk more about it at that retreat.
Yeah, I was also hoping she'd run this program. But I'm sure Cena will be able to find somebody, that's good. All right, so some of the achievements under, now on to quality of life and community, and some of the achievements under this goal include under engage arts and cultural assets. The board approved a master plan amendment to add the Carson City Arts and Culture Master Plan. And the Redevelopment Authority has allocated $25,000 annually for arts and culture, special event funding. And then under ensure quality community assets, a motel task force consisting of the fire, health, building, code enforcement departments was established to address building and fire code compliance, criminal activity, and nuisance issues related to long-term stay hotels. And there's been several inspections that we've done resulting in a decrease in nuisance calls and criminal activity, so that's good news. So under new objectives, the health department's working through the legislative process to obtain public health funding from the state marijuana excise taxes, and they're looking for that to be $5 per capita. The public health reaccreditation, the documents are due in April of 2021. We've talked a lot about updating the master plan, and a comprehensive master plan was adopted in 2006. Then it was amended in 2016 to add the arts and culture master plan and also the Lumpa Ranch North specific plan. So comprehensive updates should be actually performed every 10 to 15 years, and we're at the 12-year mark. So we're looking at there's 2 ways that we could tackle this, and one would be to have the Planning Commission prioritize the master plan sections, and then to be reviewed and updated, and then just go section by section. Or we could hire a consultant to do the update and include citizen participation. The cost of the master plan we did in 2006 was approximately $600,000. So. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe pick number 1. So another big project is the review and update of the Title 18 zoning and Title 18 appendix, the development standards in the municipal code. We also want to look at developing policies and guidance for redevelopment funding allocations. For the next 5 years, we're going to have approximately $1 million in beginning fiscal year 2022. So we just need to, see how we want to have that allocated. Do we want to spend it on corridor improvements, infrastructure, improvements to recreational facilities, incentives, special events? And then lastly, negotiate a new solid waste collection services franchise agreement. I'm running out of time. So under safety, some of the achievements. The board just approved the purchase of the aerial ladder truck. And the city has also developed a digital media coordinator position in 2016. This position develops and produces public outreach videos and updates our social media content and also gets out all of our emergency information. Yes, Rachel has been a valuable asset and too much of an asset. She has to work too much. So some new objectives. With all the improvements and the changes on Carson Street, we need to conduct a corridor study from north to south Carson Street to look at the signal timing, traffic flows, and safety. And we're also starting the process of re-implementing the traffic enforcement program. Sustainable infrastructure, some of the achievements, the completion of the energy conservation project. We've allocated the 5 cents from the general fund from property tax for asset management. We've increased funding in general government capital from $4.5 million in 16 to 3.4 in 18 and 12.3 in 19. And we've just completed the $30 million phase 1 of the wharf. And we've begun work on phase 2. So under, this is kind of new updated objectives because this is currently in our strategic plan. So with all the development happening and the increases in calls for service each year, we'll eventually need to fund a new fire station. This station could include an emergency operations center that's fully equipped for proper incident management. We've pretty much grown out of the one at Station 51. In addition, we could also use this as a backup dispatch center. So some possible funding sources include the issuance of bonds secured by the consolidated tax revenues. 15% of the C-tax can be pledged for debt service. And that's represented by the orange line, so we're well below that number. In fiscal 2023, the debt service payments will drop by $740,000 as some of the bonds are paid off. And in looking, we could issue $10 million in bonds repaid over 20 years would result in debt service of approximately $715,000. And then another possible funding source is looking at grant funds that are available for emergency operations centers. And then, so we might have the funding to be able to build the facility, but the big question has been, can the city sustain the increase in the operating expenses? So we've been looking at alternative staffing models and the possibility of using the GEMT money, the Medicaid funding. And just some good news on the first 9 months of the BLS program. They've had a total of 487 responses and revenue of a little over $200,000 with expenses of only about $98,000. This first year we did have to buy the vehicle and that was about $92,000. Let's see, other new objectives, or you already probably know about all this. We're working with the lobbyist on the proposed technical corrections to the lands bill for the next congressional session. And we're reviewing our inventory of our city-owned vacant properties to determine the best use for those properties. All right, that's it for my presentation. So what does all that mean? That means that the city has a lot of great things that are going on, and that's just a condensed version. Right now, the city's working like a well-oiled machine, and we need to continue the momentum. Which leads me to the next part of this agenda item, which is to request the board to direct the DA's office to prepare a contract to appoint me as the city manager. So what makes me the best choice for this position, and what am I bringing to the table? So I've been involved with the city's finances in some way for the last 20 years. I actually had my anniversary on Tuesday. So I know the city, I know the city's finances. I've been through the tough times. I've also been good news Nancy and sometimes great news Nancy. I've always taken a conservative approach to budgeting, and that includes always looking out into the future and always looking at sustainability before we add ongoing expenses to the general fund. And I now have the Dragon Lady watching over me. So while we can't predict when the next recession will happen, we need to prepare by continuing to build the general fund reserves and secure funds for the continued maintenance of the city's assets.
If you had your druthers, what end of fund balance would you choose?
I would like it to be at least 16%, double what it is now.
2 months.
Okay.
That's actually GFOA best practices.
Okay.
So one thing you can be sure about me is that I'm honest and fair, and I'll always keep the lines of communication open. Over the last 20 years, I've built strong relationships with the directors, the elected officials, and many of the city employees. And we have hardworking, dedicated directors and elected officials, and that I'm really been proud to work with. And they have a lot of expertise, and they know what it takes to run their departments. The city couldn't ask for better leadership, and I want to thank all of them for the support that they've given me over the last 6 months. They treated me with respect, and they were there for me anytime I needed them, day or night, weekends, even when they were on vacation. So I'm not afraid of giving constructive criticism or saying no, especially when it comes to money. I do my homework. I look at all sides of an issue before making a decision with my research to back it up. And I never promise something that I won't be able to deliver. Sorry, I think I'm getting a cold. So when times are good, we've taken a methodical approach to spending. We try to be fair and give the departments what they need to be able to maintain their expected levels of service, and but they know there's not unlimited amount of funding, or maybe you're just finding that out now. So when the time comes that we need to make tough decisions because of these relationships that we've built across the departments, we'll work together to identify the programs and functions that are the most critical and compromise when cuts need to be made. I want to thank Adriana for agreeing to be my deputy. She's brought a whole other level of expertise to our office. She's represented all the departments in the board when she was at the DA's office. She's familiar with all the issues. Her law training is a valuable asset. She can foresee when there's exposure to litigation, and so we can act quickly through our legal department. We have a good working relationship, and I have the trust and confidence in her to be able to delegate sensitive and complex issues. In closing, I just want to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to be the interim city manager. It's been an amazing experience, and I've loved working with the directors, the elected officials, the employees, and the board in this capacity. I also want to give special thanks to Janet and Rachel and Carol for keeping me in line in our office. Like every new person on the job, there's always new challenges, but you can be guaranteed that I'll give it 100%. So with that,
Very good.
I'm finally done. Sorry, I tried to talk fast.
Because we have a time set certain, I think, Nancy, what we're going to do is kind of make you wait for a little bit longer, and then, so we could ask you questions without blowing by a time certain.
Okay.
So we'll do that after, we'll continue this item until after we've heard the show cause that's set for now. We're close to now. Any member of the board need to take a break before we get started?
Just,
All
I
right, let's-
promise I can be quick.
5 minutes, okay. 10 minutes? 2? All right.
3.
We'll be in recess for at least 2 or 3 to 5 minutes. Good afternoon. We're going to call a meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We've been in recess for about 4 minutes now. We're going to take up the next item, which is for possible action, a show cause hearing and board determination whether to suspend, cancel, or revoke business license number 6629 issued to Ann Sullivan, owner of Capital City Liquidators, located at 3390 South Carson Street, for continued operation of the business in violation of the Carson City Municipal Code pursuant to Municipal Code Section 4.04.210 subsection 1. Who's going to lead us through this to say what we're doing? And we have some disclosures first to make. Supervisor Brankowski.
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. The business license holder in this show cause hearing is married to Jerry Vaccaro, who in the past has filed ethics complaints against me related to my role on this board as a supervisor. The Nevada Ethics Commission has specifically determined through an official opinion that where a public officer has been sued in his official capacity, such a circumstance does not create a private relationship between the public officer and the person or entity who sued, so as to require abstention in this situation. In fact, even a disclosure is not required. However, I'm making this disclosure in the interest of full transparency. I will be exercising independence of judgment and objectivity in this matter, and because I do not have a disqualifying conflict, I will be voting.
Any other disclosures? Not? Okay, Iris.
So Iris Yao, for the record, initially we had come here today to ask for revocation of the business license of Capital City Liquidators, but things have actually, at this point, taken a slight different turn. So we have entered into negotiations, and what we're going to be asking for you today is actually to do nothing for a 90-day period. What Ms. Sullivan and Mr. Bartlett, who's counsel for Ms. Sullivan, and I have agreed to is Ms. Sullivan will be entering into a written agreement that we will not pursue any action for 90 days. During that time, they will bring the property into full compliance. If full compliance does not occur in that 90-day period, Capital City Liquidators will be voluntarily surrendering their license at that point. In addition to that, they are going to, if the license is surrendered or automatically revoked, basically it's a stipulation for that, they would be agreeing to waive all appeals, judicial review or otherwise, and also be agreeing to not sue the city related to this matter, not pursue any lawsuits related to this matter.
How you doing, John?
How are you?
All right, good to see you again.
Yes, John Bartlett, representing Capital City Liquidators, and I have Ann Sullivan with me. And yes, Ms. Yowell has accurately stated the terms of the agreement to obtain a 90-day period to bring the property into full compliance. It is nearly in full compliance today, actually. So that is the basics of the agreement. Again, we hope to be.
So do you want to bring it back in 90 days? Is that what you're saying, or what do we do here? I mean, I assume.
Well, we originally talked about bringing it back in 90 days, I guess, but there needs to be some determination, I think, after 90 days, whether we're in compliance or not compliance, just to put a lid on this thing.
So that would be the plan. We would be bringing it back March 9th, I believe. Is it the first meeting?
7th, but first meeting.
First meeting in March, and then we would be asking for the board to make a finding whether or not they're in compliance. And from there, we would, you would make a determination.
I don't know the particulars of it. Do you need, maybe it's to you or to Dan, do you need board approval to enter into negotiations such as you're doing right now, or can you do that through the legal department and just go to DA's office? Can you do that?
What I need board approval from is for you guys to actually do nothing. Since this matter is in front of you today, it is up to you whether or not you would like us to go forward. We are prepared to go forward. We have the presentations ready. So if you decide to go forward with this and have us present the evidence and make a finding of whether to suspend, cancel, revoke, that's what we would be doing.
So what you're asking, what you're saying, and I know we got questions up here, but just to be clear, what you're saying is that you want 90 days to get it finished. You're going to get entered into some form of agreement that what they're going to do in 90 days, which will include everything that you've got. So what you're looking at this board to say today, if we go along with what you've just proposed, is to say, we'll put this on 90-day hold while you negotiate and complete it, and then bring that back to us in 90 days and see where we are.
So we've already discussed the terms of the negotiation. We would just be entering into a supplemental written agreement. So
Okay,
we
now
would be
that-
asking you
That
to...
agreement, do we have to approve that agreement?
No, you would just have to do nothing today. You would not be entertaining a motion to suspend,
We don't have
cancel,
a
or
motion.
revoke.
We don't have a motion to continue or anything like that.
No, I don't believe so.
So you're taking that off the table if we go along with this then?
If you go along with it, yes.
All right, Board. Questions are in order. Supervisor Bagwell.
So my question then, listening to what you said were the negotiated points, I didn't hear in that, so they're good for 90 days, you like everything. If they're not good in the 90 days, they would surrender. But what if they're bad on day 92? Is it an automatic surrender with any future violation at that site? Because otherwise I'm concerned we just start all over again, because they're good for 90 days.
Sure, that's a great point. Perhaps council would...
So if I can address that, I would understand the concerns of the code enforcement department on that score. However, the plan of my client currently is to liquidate most of its inventory in this 90-day period, which means they're not going to have the storage issues that they've had, which is why they've been in non-compliance. So the nature of the business is going to change dramatically to avoid this problem. I don't know how you have a automatic drop dead if you know, I mean, the whole idea of this is to bring them in compliance, and once they're in compliance, then I think, you know, if you want to have a probationary period built into this agreement that they stay in compliance for 180 days after the 90-day period, in which event, after that, they're good, and then if there's a future violation, you start over again.
I like the 180 days after the 90-day, because I just feel strongly that there's been a lot of time for you to already have brought this into compliance, and it didn't happen. And so if you're on the record indicating, yes, that you'll do the 180 days after the 90 in the negotiation, is that a yes?
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
John, sorry.
The other John.
Yeah, I'm trying to be judicious about this, and I'm not a judge by nature. But the problem is that if we have to start over, whether it's 180 days after the 90 days or whatever, then we go through all this over and over again. So the codes are there. They're easily discerned how to follow. After 180 days, I mean, you're either in code or you're not in code. So my problem with that is the codes don't go away. They're still there. But after 180 days, you can go back to where you've been before. So you say you're going to liquidate. I can look at my garage and I can liquidate all I want, and I still got stuff in there. So assure me that they're going to stay in code after 180 days if you can.
Well, the plan for this business is to liquidate the Capital City inventory and retire. They're going out of business. It might take more than 90 days, but they're going out of business. And so the reason why my client is quite confident we're going to stay in compliance is the amount of their inventory is going to be greatly reduced over the next 90 days. So there's not going to be a storage issue, which is the whole issue here is just outside storage. After 90 days, there's going to be plenty of inside storage. There probably would be very little outside storage, if any, if there's anything left at that point. So that's that's how I can reassure you that this is not going to come back as a problem in the future.
Thank you.
Can I add to that just a little bit? I don't believe that we would start over at square one if they were out of compliance after the 180 days. There's a history, a very long history here of violations. And part of the reason why we are willing to do this is because we are empathetic to the situation of Capital City liquidators as far as Ms. Sullivan's circumstances. However, and because of what they're agreeing to waive potential appeals, that is a benefit to the city. However, as far as economic and resource-wise, but there is a long history here. So we wouldn't go back to square one. We wouldn't wait another number of years before we came to the board and asked for revocation. It would actually be a lot quicker.
Okay, and just so the record is clear, what you're asking us to do today as our counsel, or I always get confused whether it's you this time or it's Learned Hand over here, but call it the lawyers, all right? You're suggesting that you're asking that we pull this from the agenda today and bring it back on March first business meeting in March, which is March 9th maybe. And that's what you're asking to do, so that you can prepare an agreement that's been put on the record here today and agreed to by these guys, by Mr. Barrett and his client. Is that right?
So I would be asking that you pull it. We would be planning on putting it on the agenda in March. However, if that written agreement weren't entered into within the next 2 weeks, then we would bring it back immediately for this hearing to occur.
All right, Supervisor Bunkowski, go.
The 180-day probationary period, if there was a violation during that period, then would the provisions of the agreement then automatically be enforced at that time, including the surrender of the business license and so forth?
That would be my preference, but I would like to get an affirmation, yes or no, from council.
Well, I would like the due process of, if there's a dispute over whether we're in compliance or not, to have somebody adjudicate that if necessary. So if there's a claimed violation and you guys set it up for the very next meeting to have that adjudicated, I'm fine with that too.
All right, I think I see where we're going. All right, board. I'm not certain this is really what's called a Hobson's choice. It's just a choice. We've been asked to pull this from the agenda without taking a motion. So as chair, I think we'll let you pull it. And we want to have back with the agreement that's agreed upon between the parties that you outlined today and Mr. Bartlett and his client agreed with today. And we will continue this until March 9th, or that first meeting in March. It's 90 days, I think. And we'll see where it goes. Is that fair enough with you?
Yes, so we would hear it in March, or you would hear it in March unless something, unless the agreement didn't get entered into or there was some other issue.
And hopefully in March, at that March meeting, we would hear that it's all taken care of. Either license is revoked or gone, or that the property's cleaned up.
We would hope that the property would be completely cleaned up or within the 20% compliance. If we feel it's not, we would bring it for a finding and ask you to make a finding that it was not in compliance, and then the automatic revocation would take place. So it would just basically be stipulating to the revocation by surrender if they weren't in compliance. You would just have to make that finding.
All right. Did you have then?
Iris, since you're leaving, who is going to negotiate this? Dan?
I'm going to get it. We already have the terms outlined.
Yeah, it's going to be done by next week.
Before, my last day is December 21st, so it'll be done before then.
Well, then I guess my question is rather irrelevant, but I'm a little confused about the March 9th date. Obviously, we would have a Thursday before that meeting, wouldn't we?
First meeting in March. I might have not had the date exactly right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, concerns? thank you for everybody for working together on this. Mr. Barrett, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll now be in recess for 5 more minutes, and Nancy, you want to come back? You might answer from over there if you want, if that's more comfortable to you. All right. We'll be in recess for 5 minutes, and we'll go back and talk to the city manager. meeting back to order. We're on the city manager's issue. Let me get my stuff out here. Nancy had just completed her presentation. We're on board questions and discussion, and we'll have public comment as well. So, Nancy, I just talked to Sherry about this, but one of the questions, I've been living with since when I was first mayor, we got downgraded a half a tick on the bond rating, because everybody was getting downgraded. I'd like to get that back. Not that it's any big money deal, but I'd like to get it back. So what I asked Sherry was, if we're going to be talking to S&Ps and Moody's, I'd like to be listening on that conversation if I could, and show them that we're interested,
We might get it back too with our fund balance, so. I think when it went down, because we're going down to 5% fund balance, and
Sherry told me she'd get it back for me.
she's the dragon lady. That's why I hired her.
How do you spell dragon in Dragon Lady?
So John told me our bond council, we're going to push to get that rating upgraded because we have such a great fund balance now. So I just already invited you, Mayor.
All right, thank you.
You're
All right, thanks, Sherry. All right, further questions of Nancy? Supervisor Bunkowski, sorry. Got too many B's going on here.
Close.
Bagwell, Bunkowski.
I always thought it
Do you
was,
know we're just ABC?
yeah, I was just going to say that. We
ABC.
can't even get past the C's on this
Right.
word. So, Nancy, thank you for the presentation. I thought it was a great synopsis of where we've been and what we've done. But there's another side to this story, which is all about you. Like your presentation was about the city, right? And what we have done as a board and as staff. I want to get some perspective on you. And I want to know specifically, where do you see the problem areas, the areas that we have not addressed or have not addressed adequately in the city, and what is your intention to address those? And what's your future vision for the city? And then I have some more questions after that.
I think the next few years with the ERP system is going to be a really big struggle for employees. They're having to do their regular full-time jobs as well as implementing this program. So we're going to need to do whatever we can to be able to support the employees. And then also just planning out for the recession, already thinking of ways that we can make cuts, have departments really look at their budgets and, see if there's ways that they can cut. And then I forgot the rest of the next part of your question.
I want to know what you see as the areas that need to be addressed, and how you would address the problems that we haven't taken care of yet.
Well, I kind of talked about just working on the agenda process and getting more training in that area. And can't really think of, just getting the lines of communication open and everyone working together. I think for the most part, everything is going pretty good right now. And
So if you had to pick 3 areas where we could do better, tell me what you think those are.
And you can't say higher.
Or a better board to work with.
Oh, 3 areas. I think just the agenda process, getting, we've had issues with the internet and the connectivity out, like at the MAC, and getting that established, and maintaining, being able to to establish a stable funding source for the assets and maintaining the facilities.
Okay, let me move on to strategic goals. Economic development, cultivate a vibrant, diverse, dynamic economy that attracts and retains businesses and a skilled workforce. Give me the Cliff Notes on how you accomplish that.
Well, just with the opening up of the hub and, trying to get that going and do some workforce training. And I think with all the improvements that we're making in the corridors, that's going to attract the economic development to the city. We've seen that in the downtown with the restaurants and the residential units and the commercial that's going in down there.
Well, you've kind of covered efficient government. Organizational culture. There's a comment in your presentation that you feel you can change the culture from the top down, meaning starting with your actions. Expand on that and tell me how you know that's going to work and what you're going to do if it doesn't.
And actually, the tone at the top starts from the board down. And no, it does. That's in the internal controls. It starts. See, Sherry says great. So it starts with the board down. But you guys are great, and that's what. That's how it's transferred to me. And then I have very high ethics, and I hold myself to a high standard. And I think when your employees see you working hard and the dedication you have, that they tend to do the same thing. You can ask finance; they'd always say, "We know you never called in sick." So. If it doesn't trickle down to the employees, you just have to do some mentoring and working with that employee, and in the end, if obviously if someone's unethical, you're not going to keep them. So.
Moving on to the motel inspection program, which is ensure quality community assets. How's that program coming along? Has it been successful? Have we had hurdles? Have we been constrained in our ability to really implement that program? And if so, how would you change it so that it is successful?
From what I've heard, I haven't really talked with Lee recently, but I think that it's going pretty good, that we, like I said, that the complaints with the criminal activity and the nuisances have gone down. And I think, the problem is whether or not we want to enforce it. And, we could change regulations to try to move those type of properties off of Carson Street. And, we can look into doing that. And it's just enforcing, once we get to the point where, the nuisance is not being corrected, then we just have to enforce it through the legal process.
And moving on to your slide on the consolidated tax that is pledged towards debt service, that is based on a 15% cap on assessed value of the property within the county. There's a flaw in that system, though, which is the assessed value fluctuates, as we saw from 2008 through 2012, where we had anywhere from a 40 to 60% drop in real value of real property and a corresponding drop in the assessed value. So what would your thoughts and plans be to safeguard that gap? In other words, if we're allowed to incur debt up to 15% of the assessed value of the property in the county, but you could be looking at a future recession where you could have a 40% drop in assessed value. Run me through that scenario and how you think about that and how you would protect the city, because frankly, in the Great Recession, we came about that far from being in default.
actually looked at that figure. So what it is so we can have debt service payments up to 15% of the consolidated tax revenues. So that's one piece of it. Our debt limit capacity is 15% of the assessed value. I looked out from our debt management policy to 2023, I think when those payments dropped. And our capacity at that point will be over $100 million. So, you know, I don't know that assessed value would drop that much to, it would affect us, at least out into.
My concern is that in 2012, no, maybe it's 2014, if assessed values had not stabilized in 2014, we would have been in default on that 15% because our debt service payments would have exceeded that 15%.
Right.
We got lucky. It had nothing to do with skill on our part. We just got lucky. So how do we prevent that going forward? I mean, we can sit here and say we're never going to have another Great Recession until the next Great Recession.
Right. I think I calculated it out. It might have been that if the assessed value dropped to 20%, we would still be fine, even looking at how I was talking about issuing the debt potentially for a new fire station. Because of that $100,000, you know, we have that much room in our debt capacity, or $100 million. And so we would just have to be careful, you know, when we're issuing debt, we have to look out into the future and look at what the trends are and watch what the sales tax, you know, is doing too on the debt that's secured by that.
Thanks for bearing with me.
Just to follow up on that, I know we got other questions here. Brad raised an interesting point, and I don't know if you folks know the answer, but suppose you did go into default. Just, I mean, what happens to the, I mean, are you required to pay the bonds off then at default, or is, because everybody's in the same soup, what happens there? What do the indentures say?
I'm not positive, but I feel as if, you know, if we can still maintain our payments, that we would be fine.
So the ending fund balance can take care of some of that, for lack of a better word, uncertainty?
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I think as long as we keep up with the payments, that, I mean, we may have some other issues with taxation, but.
Sure, jump in there, we'll go back.
I'm going to guess, based on my experience working with investors during the Great Recession, is that that's probably not the case. I'm going to disagree with you, that it allows the investors to call the debt, and in certain circumstances, such as during the middle of a recession, when they may be able to get a better return, or they may think that they can foreclose on the assets and get value out of those. We saw that happen time and time again during the recession. That's my concern, is that we can sit here and say, oh, that would never happen. Things are never a problem until they're actually a problem, and then it's too late to do anything about it. So what I am most interested in is making sure that we put into place adequate safeguards or reserves or whatever that mechanism may be, so that we don't repeat the mistakes that we made in the past that almost put us into default. And I can give you lots of stories about property owners that never missed a payment on their property and got foreclosed on because they ended up being in default on the covenants of their loan because their asset value, the real value of that property, dropped through no fault of their own.
Yeah, so I think Reno and Vegas during the recession both went negative. Their asset value exceeded their debt. Their asset value exceeded their debt for both Reno and Las Vegas. And so what they had to do was go to the state debt commission, and they had to put out a plan, tell them how they were going to fix it. And they were pretty hard on those counties for having that issue when it was really the economy that tanked. But you're right, they got too close. So I don't know. I know I'm always cognizant and looking at that bottom of 2014 before we think about issuing debt. You know, if our assessed value falls again, are we going to be in trouble? So it's, I mean, it is a concern. But I don't know that we can predict the future, that it's going to do double what it fell last time and give up projects because of that, you know? We just have to deal with what we can.
Hi, Nancy. Two concerns that I see going forward. One is our health insurance plans going forward. It's a huge issue. And how you would play into that going forward when you've got basic diagnostic tests like MRIs that are no longer covered, things of that nature. That's a concern. And so as we move into the future and for, providing adequate health coverage for city employees, what would be your engagement with regards to that issue? And is there a better buy-in? I mean, the chamber is offering health insurance now at great plans. Is there other opportunities we could explore?
That's one reason why we've been pretty much going out to bid, each year. And we've been able to get, maintain great rates. No one really knows what's going to happen with insurance, but, if the costs continue to go up, there might be, we might have to cut back on some of the benefits. And then, but also this year, we started the health savings account as kind of a trial to see how, how that works. And that could potentially have a lot of savings for the city. So there's that option as well.
My second question is, and you knew this was coming, with arts and culture being under your wing and moving forward, how would you see your interaction on expanding funding sources for the acquisition of public art? Because the reality is we have along our corridor spaces for public art, but that doesn't come free. And I know some money is had through redevelopment, but there isn't a lot above and beyond that. So what is your thought process with regards to that going forward?
So I'm all about the art right now. I embrace the artistic bike racks and the thing with the art, I think, we would have to weigh it against, unfortunately, probably a lot of the other, city programs, and you have it go through a similar process as far as, doing supplemental requests to the budget and putting that through the budget process.
Would you see any wiggle room in there if match funds were able to be provided, that it might be more of an incentive? Just a thought.
Yeah, I think definitely that makes it more of a program that we'd want to approve if there's match funding and we can get double, for our money, so.
Let's see. I did not pre-give Nancy any questions. Yep. Because I really look at this more as an interview, right, as to whether or not you're the right fit versus going out and seeing if there is a better fit. So I did not pre-give you the questions. So what I want to talk about is we had a lot of discussion today about the V&T tax, and that this board the board, when it was implemented, had promised that the tax would sunset. We have the same exact issue in the art arena. And so I want to know whether you believe that should be honored, that the hotel motel tax the occupancy tax is reduced and sunsetted as promised.
I think that we should work with the hotels and see they may want to continue the tax. It may be that they're all for it. So if we work with them and they're okay with continuing the tax, then then that's how I would do that.
So what if the Board of Supervisors in 2025 was okay with doing the tax for the V&T to continue it for road improvement?
Well,
I'm just looking for consistency in theories and I don't
think
think
you-
so. I think a tax is a tax, and if you told people it was going to sunsets, but, or
I think
inconsistent.
you do your research and you have your
Okay.
backup there, depending on what
So both
other
options.
funding is available. I think if you have the backup and you present it to the public and get their buy-in, then it's okay to go forward then with continuing the tax.
And then, these questions are all aimed for me to hear your thinking process, not an agreement or a disagreement. Okay, just want to clarify that on the record, that it's meant to see what steps you'll take. So, there are lots of issues that come up every single day that are not in the norm, right, or not what you expected to get done. And so I'm kind of looking for your management thoughts or processes on how you manage either for crises, but yet figure out how you get all the goals and the strategic plan. And so just tell me how you see yourself managing the activities of the city.
Lots of times when things come up, we have citizen complaints. I get with whatever department that, when someone gives me a call, I don't, rush to judgment or an answer. I get all of the, from all different sides, what's going on from our point of view, and just so I can answer that person and know all about what the issue is. So I kind of delegate that over to the departments. I have Adriana to help me with, I actually didn't get a chance to go over it, but we've kind of divided up the different departments between the two of us so that she can focus more on the day-to-day operations with certain departments and me with the other ones. So that's how I deal with that. And then, yeah, it is hard to struggle. There's a lot, to juggle. There's a lot of stuff going on in the city, but I just have it planned out what needs to get done, and I just take a methodical approach to it. And not everything probably gets done in the time that I need it to get done, but I'll stay there till 11 o'clock at night if I have to.
It went off because, sorry. The first 6 months in your communication with the board up here, elected officials and maybe other elected officials, so would you change any? Because I think what you did is continue what the previous city manager had in the meetings with us and things like that. So you see that as positive? What changes would you make? No changes? What do you think?
I think the meetings that I have with you guys the week before the board meeting, I think are great. I wish we had more time. The problem is the timing of the whole budget packet itself. I definitely want to continue doing that. Try to develop a format to make sure that we're getting all of your questions answered and on the board items. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of that. So I don't think I'd really change anything unless there's something that you guys would like to see changed.
Thank you. Like Lori, I didn't give any questions to our city manager beforehand. And I did ask her a question when she was first named the interim. I won't get into the first question I asked her because that's a personal observation I made. She gave me a good answer on that one. But my second question to her then, and I ask it again of her now that she's had several months of experience in this job, and that is, do you know who you are? I'm quite convinced I know who I am and what I want and why I want it. And do you still feel the same way you did several months ago, that you want this and that you are going to give your all to it?
I'm glad you told me what I said several months ago.
A little clue there.
Yes, actually, it was definitely a big change from what I've always done. I think that having the finance background is a definite plus for me. And I do want to get more out into the public. I've really enjoyed doing that. And so, yeah, I'm really enjoying the job.
The reason I ask that is because I've had a few jobs where I did them for 6 months and wanted to kill my boss or whatever, maybe your 5 bosses in this instance, and wanted to get out of it. So I got out of it. And that's the hardest thing when you find yourself trapped in something that you actually don't like. I don't want anybody working for me, and that's what, in fact, is going on here. We hire you, you run the city. I do think some of the questions here, although I'm not second-guessing my colleagues, aren't actually to the point that as I would see it, because I don't think it's your job to have a big vision for the city. I think that's our job, and I think we have to do that in collaboration with each other. It's good if you have a vision, but at the same time, I don't want you trying to steer us, which leads to my next question, and one that really concerns me. You have already said that you think you have good relations with the department heads and the other people. You said that you have integrity and that you make up your mind, over time with evidence, etc. I'm concerned some of our employees come to us with it's quite obvious to me, a dog in the hunt. And that always bothers me because it's our job to set policy and their job to give us all the information that we need. And some do, and sometimes, I think, try to hide the ball. I don't accuse anybody in particular, but will you pledge at this point always to be straight with us completely about everything you know about whatever issues before us?
I do pledge that. And also on that point, I think that, a lot of the time I don't know that something's being kept from you on purpose. It might just be the timing and having, being in a rush and trying to get the item done. But I would definitely watch for that and not allow that to happen.
What is your view about my supposition that sometimes some people try to hide the ball from us?
I don't think that they do. I think it just comes down to not having enough time to get all the information. So that's my thought on that.
Well, that's about all I have to ask. I will say that I'm probably going to vote for you, even though you want to have a 16% ending fund balance, which I'm not too sure I agree with in the sense that it will be worth less 5 years from now than it is now. But we do need to keep a good balance. I agree with that. I would like to see our bond rating go up. Thank you, Nancy.
That was in best case scenario. I'm not sure we'll get there.
You're like, Nancy, two questions. One, what's your take or your position on constituent interaction, as opposed to dealing with your department heads, on dealing with citizens or constituents?
I've actually really enjoyed having that interaction, and I'm hoping to do more of that. I've been in the office quite a bit lately, and I haven't had any issues with any of the constituents that I've come in contact with so far.
Because I think you and I have discussed about this, and I know your department heads have too. I think one of the big things that we've been accomplished, when Nick was here, was, that analysis or that proposal, governance requirement that if somebody complained on Carson Connect or complained that they'd get an answer from somebody, live person somehow, in 24 hours. Is that still where we're going with your department heads and things?
Yes, and actually that's why I brought that up in my presentation, is trying to look into that, update that process, make sure that it's still, being used as it was supposed to be, and getting it across to all the departments.
Okay. The other thing that I've learned is city managers have to be the jerk. There's another word for it, but I'll call it jerk.
Nickname?
No, that's not your new
She
nickname.
liked Good News Nancy.
I like Good News Nancy, that's better yet. And so, and I've talked to you about it, I know you feel comfortable saying no to folks, and that's what it really gets down to, because they need to know that, it starts at the top, and it probably ends at the top too, and the top needs to be working. And I've met with some of your department heads anyway, just in casually, about whether, put it bluntly, whether or not you're a pushover or you're not, and they all tell me that you're not. And that's important, because I think, we all want to do good things for people, but at the end of the day, you are the person who has to say no to these folks, and just tell me you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I've probably, if you want to raise your hands, I probably said no to a lot of them out there.
Well, the ladder truck guy's back there, but that was
Except the fire
$1.8
department,
million,
maybe. They
man,
probably
I
like
tell you.
me right
Okay.
now.
All right. All right.
And plus, my husband said that I'd scare him if I was in a meeting with him.
Good enough. Good enough. All right. All right. Other questions from the board? We'll take some public comment. Anybody want to weigh in? Chief.
Mayor, members of the board, Sean Simon, Fire Chief. Couple comments regarding Nancy's leadership and abilities. She got thrown into a very tough situation. I don't think anybody really predicted or expected our city manager to leave. We were on a strong path and a track. And Mayor, as you know, Marine leads in a peculiar and different way. The fire department can relate to that. I think the sheriff's department, but not all departments can always relate to that style. Nancy has brought her own leadership in. I don't think she has tried to emulate Nick. I think she's recognized some of the policies and programs that are working and has continued to do that. I think in 6 months she is really beginning that evaluation now. Some of her qualities that I think we all recognize is from her leadership perspective, she's very trustworthy, she's honest, and she's a very positive leader, which creates, I think, an open mindset at the department level, as well as sets the tone for our employees that it's no fun to go into the boss's office when they're always in a bad mood or very negative. She very much trusts her department heads. She values our input, but has demonstrated the ability, I think by seeing the hands that just got raised, she demonstrates the ability to say no and change the direction of the organization. I also think one of her greater traits that I think we will see in the future is her ability to adapt and grow into the position. It was just a few short months ago that she was our deputy city manager, sitting happily in the finance department, where that is absolutely her comfort zone, which, speaking as a department head, I think that's good to have a city manager with a strong background in finance. But to go thrown into, or not thrown into, to accept the deputy city manager's position and then shortly thereafter becoming the city manager, there's obviously going to be growth time, and I think she has that team in place from both the board side and from her departments to help her grow into that and to evolve into that. I think her vested that she is vested in this community and has been in this community for an extreme, your entire life, 23 years. I think that is a strong value to evaluate. And then, the risk that we would take if we did go and look to the outside is that change. And you make very tough decisions when you're looking at a city leader over a series of interviews, and it is not always that difficult to show yourself as one person and then your character shows up as a different person later. And I think Nancy's character has been tried and true, and we know exactly the positive benefits we're getting with her as our leader, and I certainly support her and have enjoyed working with her, and I look forward to that in the future. Thank you.
You're always articulate, Chief.
I got to follow that. I'm not articulate, but I will be brief. Darren Schultz, Public Works Director.
Yeah, I'd just like to go on the record, and this is my fourth boss since I've been here, and I haven't been here that long, but, I really, as to be expected, you really see strengths and weaknesses in all of them. And I think Nancy's leadership is going to be, it's different than Nick's. And her strengths and weaknesses are different than Nick's were. But really, to me, what it comes down to is when Nick was hired, it was pretty clear to all of us, and I think you expressed that you were looking for real change in the direction of where Carson City was going. And that was made clear. And I think where we're at now, at least what I've come to understand is you're happy with the direction and the change that has taken place for the most part in many things that were done. And Nick did start a number of initiatives and a number of changes, and us as staff, we got on board with it, and we were, we marched right along, and we were happy. And I think at this point it's, we want to carry that momentum forward. A lot of those initiatives, we don't want them to die, and Nancy has pledged to do that, as well as bring in some of her side of things and the way she looks at things. So I feel really comfortable with the direction that she has given and that she has proposed here today, and my full trust and confidence is in Nancy, and she tells me no every day, so it's not, you don't have to worry about that. But I also feel very comfortable as a director coming in and explaining to Nancy when I've screwed up, and and that doesn't happen quite every day, but it's something that I, as a boss, I really respect that I can do that, feel comfortable about it, and know that she'll help me with a solution. So she brings that to the table, and I just want to go on the record. She has my full support and confidence and trust moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Sherry.
Dragon lady. Okay, so I've been working with Nancy in some capacity or another since 2004 when I audited Carson City. And I'll never forget one of the first things she said when I found, an oopsie was, we just need to be right. It just needs to be right. And I thought maybe it'd be different when I came to work here, but it isn't. Everything just needs to be right. She has more integrity than anybody I've ever known. She really is just fair, and she's a great boss. I also feel comfortable going and telling her that I messed up, and if she made an error, she's actually fine with that too. Whoops, yep, I made an error. Thanks for catching it. And it's great to be able to be honest like that with each other.
Thank you, Sherry. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in? Mr. Giomi, Supervisor-elect.
Don't get a vote yet.
You don't get a vote.
Hi, Stacy Giomi. No, I don't have a vote, but I have a voice. I'm kind of in a unique position. I've sat here before this body for the position that Nancy's going for. I've been a city employee, and now I'm honored to be sitting where you are here in about a month, as long as I don't get hit by a bus in the next 60 days or so here. But I just want to say that what I think is important, first assuming that the person you have for the position is competent. I think it's I don't want to undersell competence. I think competence is very important. People don't talk about it a lot, but it's a big deal to me. You have to be competent in what you do. And Nancy is competent. Is she perfect? No, she's not perfect, but here's what I think is critical. Nancy has shown a commitment to this community. She's built a life here. She has kids here. They went to school here. Loyalty is important to me. It should be important to this community. And I think if if everything else is equal, if you have someone who's demonstrated a commitment to an organization, they've done it competently, and then they've shown on top of that a commitment to the community, then I think you have a winning package. The rest of it you can teach. The rest of it you can mold. The rest of it you can work together on. So it's a big deal to me that she's invested in the community, as it is for anyone who I think works for the city. They need to make an investment in where we live and about this place we all care about. So I think Nancy will do a fine job. And that commitment to the community is what I think is the most important. So thank you for hearing me.
Okay, and in case we didn't say it, congratulations for your election. We'll see you on January, second meeting in January, right? And you're going to get sworn in on the 7th, I think. Is that when we're doing it?
What time's our swearing in?
I saw on the internet, is it at noon?
Noon.
Is that true? Okay.
Yeah, the judges just approved the schedule, and Aubrey, I asked her to email them to all the elected officials and those being sworn in, so I think you should see them probably tomorrow.
All right. Any other public comment? Board?
Wait, I have to say,
Oh,
I
go
have to
ahead.
say something. So, 6 months ago, I had no idea that Nancy was going to ask me to come and be her deputy, and this was after you approved her contract, wherein I wrote a clause that says that she gets to revert back to the deputy if. So I said, thanks a lot, Nancy. You should have told me this about a week ago before I put that in there. But, I was very happy where I was. That was a good gig. But this was an opportunity, and it wasn't just the position. It also had a lot to do with who I was going to be reporting to. And Sherry stole my word, integrity. I was going to say that if you look up the word in the dictionary, it's got a picture of good news Nancy next to it. I've enjoyed working with her for the last 6 months. She's the hardest working individual, I'll tell you right now. If you drive, past City Hall, her light is always on at night. She's there at lunchtime. She's there before I get there. She is a perfectionist, and that's the kind of person that you want, leading your directives. And so, anyway, thank you for the opportunity, Nancy. I've really enjoyed it, regardless of what happens.
Okay, we'll bring it to the board here. Let me just say one thing and kick it off here a little bit. Sometimes it's a little awkward to have your department heads come up and talk good things about you. Some people can look at that and say, oh, come on, they're just padding their position and stuff like that. But part of being leaders is developing a feeling of camaraderie and mutual trust among people, and that does start at the top. Because you mentioned the word silos in your presentation, and I'd hopefully we've done a lot, and you've done a lot to say no silos. I mean, if our department heads aren't doing their thing, you're the first to let them know that, hey, that's unacceptable. But on the other side of that coin, we have department heads who are not only just committed to the city, they're committed to you, but it helps in terms of leadership to have someone at the top who is being the example of what leaders should be. And so I'm proud that they came up here and said these things about you. And I don't look at that as a downside. I think that means that things are going all right here in this community in terms of the ability of people to do their jobs and for lack of a better word, to like doing their jobs, because we're doing stuff for our community. And so, my hat's off to you for that. And, obviously you and I work closely to each other. We can work on this agenda stuff here, I didn't get a lunch today, so we'll work on that agenda stuff. But Nancy, you're absolutely right. Leadership starts at the top. And that starts with all 5 of us up here, setting the tone of how we want our people to interact with the public, how we want them to conduct their business, how they want to conduct their jobs, how we want them to interact with their employees as well, those who work for them. And you're the person to do that. So, you know, I'll also tell you, you know, thanks for stepping in, regardless of how the board goes here. Thanks for stepping in back in May when Nick told us that he was leaving. Those were not easy times. I've been through this now, I think, 3 times. You know, we're on the right track. In my view, we're on the right track with you, Nancy. So that's where I come, okay? All right.
Yeah, I think it's true what the mayor said about Darren and the fire chief and the dragon lady coming up here. I don't know how to take the Hollywood deputy city managers because she has a vested interest in not having Nancy come back and be the deputy city manager, but I'll take her for what she said. I agree with you that this is important, and I was really happy to see our former fire chief step after her, our future supervisor from Ward 1, and give his view, because he has a broader view of all this than any of us could have, because he's been through what he's been through. And I really am going to be sad to see Karen go, but I know he'll make a great replacement. I just want to add that I wrote a book 32 years ago about 2 women who ran for governor in the state of Nebraska. It was the first time 2 women were the major political party nominees in any state in the nation. One of them happened to be the Republican who won, but it didn't matter. The book was a lot of fun, and it basically was stolen news. But I said in this book that the day will come when women are going to take over, and it'll probably be a long way in the future. But the truth of the matter is, I'm happy to make this vote. No matter who Nancy is, I probably would be voting for any woman who was sitting there, because my mother was a paragon of the early newspaper days 100 years ago. She started in the newspaper business. Actually, almost exactly 100 years ago, she started in the newspaper business, and there weren't a lot of men. And so this is a red letter day for me, because now we have 104 members of women members of the House, and 24, I believe, senators. And we're going to have a city manager and a deputy city manager who are women. And I'll tell you right now, I've been a man for 76 years, and I trust women more than I do men.
Well said, John.
Well, I'm just sucking up.
And with that said, you know, Nancy, I appreciate the fact that you are willing to roll up your sleeves and get the job done with honesty and integrity day in and day out. And that matters a lot. And for that reason, I support you 110%. So.
It's hard to sit up here and talk about somebody in front of them. It's hard. I mean, it's hard on you, it's hard on us. You know, I judge people by their character, or at least I try to, at least as much as I can see their character, which means that you start with integrity. If a person has integrity, my belief is everything else will follow. If you have integrity and you have a work ethic and you're competent, then you have all the tools to learn any job and eventually do it well. And I put that word eventually in there because, you know, you have your pros, you have your cons, and at this point, your con is experience. But I see you trying, and I see you working as hard as you are able to do and doing the dirty work and the hard work that we ask you to do. And it's hard to please 5 bosses, especially when we give you conflicting instructions. and that's my plug against the open meeting law, is that we don't get to talk to each other. And so when we're talking to you guys, it happens a lot that one of us tells you to do one thing and somebody else asks you to do something that's the complete opposite. And yet you deal with it and you do it with a smile. So I believe that because you have the integrity and the work ethic, that you can grow into this position and do a good job despite your lack of experience. So I will fully support you in this position as long as you continue to learn. And I feel like I've been the hardest on you of everybody up here. But I want to know, like I've said all along, I want to know who you are and where you want to take this city. So I am going to support you. My preference, when we get to the staff direction on a contract, if we get to that point, would be to go, with a one-year contract so that we can evaluate this again at the end of another year. That's for you guys to decide. But
That's all you.
well, that's bring it up during discussion. So anyway, you have my support because I think that you have all the tools that you need, and now I just want to see you grow.
I just want to add on that. I definitely do have a lot to learn, but I've enjoyed every bit of the learning process. So, and just one other thing, this was my first interview in 20 years. In an open meeting.
Yeah, go.
So I think you're the perfect person for the next year or two. I got away with that one, huh? Because we're going to be implementing all these brand new computer systems. And so my question really was aimed earlier to get you to recognize your resources are going to be hugely tied to the success of the implementation of our new computer systems across every division, department, and I just don't think we have a better candidate. I don't think we could even go out and recruit one. So I wanted to put it on the record that you're the right candidate for the right reason at the right time. So, and I really enjoy working with you. I don't know if I hope Brad's harder than I am because I think I'm just a jewel. But I know I press you too, right? I know I press, but I think that we do that for the right reasons too, because we want you to grow and we want the city to have the best possible services it can, and be transparent to the public, and we never rubber stamp a single thing. You can ask the fire chief back there, right? Whew, thought that ladder truck was a gimme, man. How'd this turn out? Because we care. And I know that so do all the departments. So I just think you're the right person at the right time. So
I think what you've heard today are three words: honesty, integrity, and transparency. You have all of those. Keep it up. All right. I don't know how long are you expecting to be here? 10 years? 20? I mean, Brad raised a question. I mean, if we...
That was the
forever.
That was the first question I asked you.
Okay,
Do you remember, Nancy? That was the first question I asked you.
John was worried that I wasn't
All right.
gonna.
Well, before we take a vote, do you want to say anything, Nancy?
I just want to thank you guys again for giving me this chance, and I think Brad and Lori are probably equally hard in different ways. But I truly value your input and how that you've helped me through this process, and once again I want to thank everyone out here that has come to support me, and I truly have all the respect in the world for all of you, so thank you.
Okay, board? Somebody want to try a motion?
Do we need to have some discussion on the staff direction as far as what?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, we can either discuss without a motion or not. I mean, it's kind of a, technically we should crank up a motion, and then discuss that motion. But we can talk about, if we do this, how long should it be?
Right.
I think that's a legitimate question. I know you mentioned a year. My own sense is that maybe that ought to be 2 years, just because I think that, a year goes by pretty darn quick, and we'll know if something's going awry. But I'd like to give some degree of certainty that, this is the road we're going to be going down. So I don't.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
18 months, because that'd put us in. Suggestion, 18 months, because that would put us in the summer months if we were to make a change, and it might be easier to go looking at that point. I don't think we will be, but just a thought.
Yeah. I don't know. I listened to what other board members say. I think the contract contract with Nick was that 4 years?
No.
Two?
Can't, it's
Two?
illegal. You can only do two.
Two, that's two. Well, that would be my suggestion to you. And
Again, asking, do we want to, we won't go there, but let's say we are in December 2020. Ask yourself, do you want to start looking then?
Well, I think, I get where you're coming from. My sense is, in 18 months, we're going to know just as much as we're going to know. I mean, so people will know that that's happening. I mean, granted, there maybe is a buyout in the contract, but it's not for very long. I mean, if it's 6 months, but, I'd feel more comfortable with just me. I'd feel more comfortable with a set 2-year period and go on, just like we did with Nick, and then go down the road. I mean, if it's the middle of the winter, it's the middle of the winter. I mean.
Well, my thought process is that just with the systems conversion alone, Lori makes a good point. I mean, that is one long, hard year to just get that implemented. That doesn't even, not that you're singularly focused, but it will take a lot of your focus. And so to implement any other things that you want to see getting done, I think we have to allow that time frame. And so my thought process is the 2 years in order to accomplish what you've set out to accomplish.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
Well, maybe I'm going to just propose something slightly different, that to me, it doesn't matter whether it's 1 year or 2 year. What really matters is the clause in the contract that we get to tell you we're unhappy with your services and what the exit plan is. So I don't really think, honestly, it matters whether it's 1 year or 2 years. So I'm okay with the 2 year because I think you're going to be successful. So that's my vote for you to say that I think you're going to be successful. I want to give you a 2-year contract. What matters is the buyout component if we're not happy. So that, to me, is more important that we give Dan direction on. Is it we give you 60 days notice and no cause gone? I mean, I think those are more important discussions.
Well, and part of it, she's going to have to, we can't negotiate a contract here, but I think, Dan and Nancy are getting the idea of where we're coming from. I mean, I can't remember Nick's buyout. I've got that contract, but I just look at that. But I think, we want to see what that is. It's got to be fair to both people, because I think, we're asking Nancy to put the rest of her life on hold. And so, that's why, early termination things, if there's no cause, and I repeat, are in contracts. But it's my 2 cents. So anybody else want to weigh in? All right, well, why don't we try this? We'll see where it goes. Why don't we entertain a motion to instruct our legal counsel to negotiate with this interim city manager to bring back a contract to us for 2 years with the changes that they can negotiate and that they deem appropriate, and we'll see where it goes then. But is that all right?
Yep.
All right. We'll see. Somebody want to make that motion?
You just made it.
All right. I'm not certain. Okay, I'll make that motion. Somebody wants to second it, we can discuss it.
I'll second it.
All right. There's a motion and a second. So discussion's in order.
I just need clarification. So are you saying we're granting the authority for whatever Dan and Nancy decide, and then
No. It has to come back to us. I mean, but they have to negotiate. I mean, I'm not going
to start.
I don't want us to negotiate in public here because it's not fair to either one of them.
Okay.
But I think that we're going to have to pass on the contract no matter what. So we need to see that. So whatever you come with, and off the top of my head, the contract we had with Nick is a pretty good contract, as I recall. So you might start as that as a template and see how you feel. But I think both parties have to be comfortable with it, and that's what we're doing right here. But you guys have to be comfortable with it. We have to make the decision here. So do something that makes us comfortable. All right. Anybody else?
Can I have just a further thought?
Sure.
If we have some issues with the template, which was Nick's contract, that we're not comfortable with, I wasn't a party to that original contract, Bob, just being honest. So there's some provisions in there that I'm really not comfortable with. Should I communicate those to Dan?
Well, I think you got to be a little
That's what I'm asking,
careful
because you
about
don't want
that.
to discuss it here.
I mean, I'm not
but
telling
I
them,
don't
I'm not
wanna-
telling them you got to take that as a template. I'm just saying as an employment contract, lawyers like to start with templates and go from there. I mean, so I'm not telling them they have to just flip that over and change the names and the dates. But I am saying that that's something, that contract gives you the points to discuss and see which makes sense. And, my sense is that, individual board members should not necessarily be weighing in on that negotiation between those two people there until it gets up to here. And then if we're uncomfortable with something, we'll see a draft before. That's my sense. Otherwise, we're going to have 5 people negotiating with the lawyer and the city manager, unless I'm misreading what people want to do here. But I think, if you've got concerns about what was in Nick's contract, I'd send them to Dan. But I think, be careful with that, because I think that at the end of the day, we all speak as one voice up here, and it's not just one person. So you take that as a concern, and maybe there's a way you can draft around it. But I think, this is a transaction that you're going to bring to us, that you two negotiate for us, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Mr.
Lack
Mayor,
of clarity?
if I may?
Sure.
I think that's pretty clear to me. I just want to make, I guess perhaps clearer on the record that when the DA's office is negotiating on behalf of the city, meaning the Board of Supervisors, I see my role here as really bearing down on the language itself. I want to make sure that the parameters are there, it's clear, with your your regular provisions, your sort of your normal provisions, early termination, buyout provisions with or without cause, so on and so forth. Your fundamentals, I want to make sure that that's all laid out crystal clear in there. When it comes to matters of policy, if there are additional benefits, for example, that run with the term of the employment, that's something that I would prefer, if that's okay with the board and you, Mr. Mayor, to have Nancy as the employee to bring that to me as a proposal. I will incorporate it to the best of my ability to make it clear and legally sufficient and appropriate into that, and also at the same time protect the interests of this board and the city to make sure that it's legally enforceable. But what I don't want to do is to stray outside my lanes of being legal counsel and propose policy terms that would run with the term of the employment.
Yeah, I don't
And
think
hopefully
anybody's
that'll
asked you to do that. And when we did it with other city managers that we've had, we were pretty careful to make sure that line is adhered to. And it occurs to me, Dan, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that in a situation like this, you work for a separate independent branch of government, and even though this board as a group and the city is your client, in this one, that's why you're on the negotiating team, because you're not representing Nancy in this one. Understood? Okay, did I say that right?
I could not have said that better myself.
Okay, all right. Which means that Nancy can get her own counsel if she wants to. I don't know that that's required, but I think, that I just laying out the parameter there about, where it is, because I think you're absolutely right. And I think that gets what Supervisor Bagwell was talking about is, be careful about don't strain over the line on policy, which comes back to us so that we can be the jerks.
That's what we.
That's what we
Yeah,
get.
we're good at it.
We get paid to do that.
Thanks for leaving me that out. I appreciate it.
Okay, all right. Further comments or discussion?
Question I have, timing for the contract to come back.
I think we were probably, I should probably let Dan answer, but I think it was probably going to be too quick to get it done for the next meeting, so we were thinking of the January 3rd meeting.
Which means we're negotiating in public on that contract.
Or we could work really hard this weekend and we could try to get it out for the next meeting. Yeah, and the current contract that I have was based on Nick's, and I think we made some tweaks to it. We obviously have to take out the part where Adriana doesn't lose her job, but I wasn't, I mean, in my mind, I'm not thinking of making, drastic changes to that. So I think we should be able to work on it and hopefully get it out by the next meeting.
And to the board and Mr. Mayor, just to help facilitate this process and understand, of course, time is of the essence when it comes to this situation. I mean, I'm happy to, put in the A+ effort, and I'm sure I can crank this out in time for the next meeting if that's your preference.
That mean you go B later or earlier? Or kidding.
Will and Dan, before you leave today, have a discussion with Supervisor Bagwell, or tomorrow, whenever, to get what her take is so she knows.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
All right. All right. Other discussion? Brad?
Yeah, the template that Nick brought forward for his contract was not my favorite. I said that at the time. There's provisions in there that I don't like. In the negotiations, without getting into the policy side of it, Dan, if there are provisions in there that are not in the best interest of the city, then my expectation would be that you would propose removing those, because that contract was all Nick.
Understood.
All right. Other discussion? I thought we were just going to adjourn.
Just keeping you on your toes.
Okay. On the motion, everybody understand what the motion is? All right. On the motion, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay. Bring back a good contract. All right. And now you can take this off your plate, Nancy. I know you've been sweating this one for a while, so. Before everybody leaves, public comment? We got board reports and public comment, so. All right, board reports before we get to public comment. Board reports, go.
Want me to do one?
Go.
I just wanted to announce that on December 12th at 5:30 in the Sierra Room here, we will be having just an informational meeting for the public that is interested to learn about issues concerning the gun range. So Brad and I and then some city staff will be having an informational meeting if there's any public that would like to attend.
What time was that?
5:30
5:30, what day?
on December 12th
Okay.
in this room.
Well, yeah, I mean, safety is important on this issue, and it's really important, not just from the public safety standpoint, but it's important from a financial liability standpoint, because now that people know what can happen out there, there's potential, I'll just leave it at that, rather than go down that road. Okay. Any other board reports? I do have one, the other night, I happened to make a meeting with the defense industry, with the defense minister of India, who was the third most important, the third in line to be premier of India in Reno. And it was with a lot of the Sikh community was over there, but it was an amazing little conversation with this minister of defense from India. And John, you'll be proud to know that she was a woman. She is a woman. I will tell you, it was the most enlightening couple hours I've spent with an elected official. She really knew her stuff, so I was pleased to go over there and say hello to her. And, I'll also say, Reno didn't reply. Carson City did, so I made sure that when we gave a little announcement, that we said we're the most important city in the state. We are the capital of the state, so don't feel slighted that Reno's not there. Okay, all right.
Our board members are jewels.
All right. Anything else to come before the board? All right, are we ready to adjourn until December 16th?
Final public comment.
Final public comment. Anybody? Nick, you back there for comment? I saw you getting up. All right. Anybody else, public comment? All right. Hearing none, without objection, we're adjourned until December 16th.